Today I'm going to pick up this radio using mental telepathy. I have a book here that tells how to do it. Okay. And what does the book say? Okay, got it. Once more. Hey, I did it. Cool. Wait a minute. I can't let go of the radio. I can't put the radio down. I can't let go of the radio. Come on, you. Come on. Damn you. My son Mikey gave me this radio. It's a Sears Silvertone, model 1007. I can't find much information about this online, but I did find a single page in a 1960 Sears catalog where it shows this radio listed for $25.99. You could buy it with $3 down and monthly installments of $4 each. In 1960, $25.99 is the equivalent of $275 in 2024, ergo the monthly installments. Now, Mikey lives out in Uniontown, Pennsylvania, way out west near Pittsburgh, and I live near Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, out east. So this radio has traveled for hundreds of miles to get to me. Mikey's mom and his sisters went out to visit him, and when they came back with this radio and a message from Mikey that said, hey Dad, here's a radio, fix it or throw it away, I don't care. Personally, I think it was pretty nice that he was thinking about me, since I was the only family member that didn't go out and visit him. Now I would plug this in, but there's something rattling around inside of it. Being as it's from 1960, it would have a printed circuit board and a ferrite rod antenna. And I'm hoping it's not the ferrite rod antenna that's been banging around inside the radio. So let's take a closer look at the radio, and then we'll open it up and see what's inside. To turn this radio on, you pull on the volume control. Then you can adjust the volume. If you turn it off and come back later and turn it back on, it will be set to the same volume you had it. According to our label here, this is the tone control, and here's our tuning. And you can see we've got a good dial cord because I'm able to tune it. This front grill thing is in pretty good shape. It just has dirt on it, but there's a chunk missing out of it here, which is an odd place for it to be missing. I'm wondering if somebody had this radio apart. The bottom has a large crack that runs through the center. There was a label here that showed where the tubes go. It's missing a screw, and something is preventing this front panel from sitting down flush, and it's probably all related. Now these feet things are kind of chewed up, like they had it sitting on cement or something rough. The top has a sticker on it that says $5, and underneath the sticker is another sticker that also says $5. Now the back has some dings and marks in it. There's a hairline crack here. It has what appears to be a cigarette burn, but it's not. That mark was from this radio sitting for a long period of time in contact with the cord. The chemicals in the rubber reacted with the chemicals in the plastic, and they melted each other. There's also a broken wire right at the plug. Now that wouldn't stop me from plugging it in. I would just cut the plug off and stick the wires in the electrical outlet. But we've got this rattling going on in here. So let's open her up and see what's going on. Well, here's one of our rattles. It's a piece of the plastic cabinet. The radio doesn't seem to be in bad condition, it's just dirty. There's something weird here. This is an interlocking plug, and it used to be attached inside the cabinet, but there are no way to access the screws on the outside. So this was once set up so that if it took the back off, it would automatically unplug the radio. Now there's some rust on the back of the speakers, which are loose, except for this one, which is held in with a paper clip. Well, I think at this point we can cut the plug off that wire, plug the wires into the electrical outlet, and see if the radio will play. I think this light's causing interference. Stand by.
With the invasion of illegal
The gun. The details are...
Next thing you know, 5 shots ring
And
out.
the story unfolds.
the former president is basically
FM. Welcome to AutoZone. What are you working on today?
Well, it worked for a minute.
Commodore Barry Bridge, still have a jam up on the upside going into New Jersey. There's construction work and the rest of the bridges. And in the Garden State.
Okay, so it sounds like the radio is working. There's some kind of intermittent in there where we lost the reception for a minute. Let me turn this off. Unplug it. These speakers are one of the things that were rattling. Even the paper clip doesn't hold it in. Now, who would have taken this radio apart and put a paper clip in there? But we'll find the intermittent, we'll clean it up, and then we'll start to look at the plastic cabinet and see what can be done with it. Well, I've got it a little bit dusted off, and I found a few other issues. Every single one of the posts that holds these speakers in are broken. I think the paper clip is to keep this from falling right out of the radio. There's this bizarre light bulb that lights up the dial that's obviously burned out. What the heck is that? They had these in 1960? Come on, Sears. You couldn't use a regular pilot light? Was there some kind of patent infringement? You used this bizarre socket? I think the biggest issue is that the circuit board is being pulled up by the tuning capacitor due to the pressure on the dial cord. And I ran this all the way through the dial from one side to the other, and this actually came off. This radio has so many issues, I don't think it's worth my while or my time to try to restore it. I may make a few repairs to it since the radio itself is still working. And the first thing I'll do is try to get this capacitor and this wheel back in the proper orientation. If I can't, there's no point in going any further, because if I put the cabinet back together and then tune the dial from one side to the other, this dial cord is going to pop off the wheel, and that will be the end of your tuning days. I'll try to find another light bulb, and I'll try to get these speakers attached somehow, even if I have to glue them in with JB Weld. So here's my clever idea. I've got this piece of brass. I'm going to cut a strip of the brass and drill a hole in each side, drill corresponding holes in the steel chassis, and then slide the piece of brass in between the circuit board and the chassis. Screw it down with nuts and bolts, and it should pull the variable capacitor and the circuit board back into its proper position. Here's the bracket I made. I cut it with a Dremel and took a file to the edge. It'll fit in here like this. I'll drill some holes in the appropriate places, and we'll use nuts and bolts to pull the circuit board back down where it belongs. Now when I do that, it's going to put a lot of tension on the dial cord, but there's a spring here. As I'm pulling down on the circuit board, I'll try to relieve the tension with the spring. In the meantime, I'll take about 24 pictures showing how the dial cord is routed in case I have to replace it. Look at this. It crosses over here. I found this little tab soldered to the circuit board. It's got the chassis number on it. So hopefully I can use this number to find more information about the radio. Okay, now here's the result. The brass bracket didn't work as well as I thought it would, but I was able to reposition this pulley by pulling it outward. So between the two fixes, the dial cord will not come out of the track, even if you go from one end of the dial to the other. I've decided that the only proper way to clean this cabinet front is to put it in soap and water. But I can't do that with everything attached to it because there are holes in it for the speakers, and the speakers will be ruined. So, even though I was just farting around with this dial cord, I intend to take everything out of the cabinet, and when I do, this top part will fall in towards the chassis and the dial cord will go limp. So I'll tape everything up and hold the dial cord in place while the parts are out of the cabinet. These broken parts here held in the dial. Now there's nothing holding it in. There's the dial plate. This part here is to transfer the light from the pilot light down into the dial. So I'll polish up the front. I have to be very careful about the back because those numbers could come off, especially if they get wet. Here's our happy little radio cabinet all cleaned up. Now I don't know what was on the front of this, but it was really difficult to remove. It didn't seem to be soda or beer or juice. It wasn't oily. I don't know what it was, so I'm going to tell people that it was blood. Yes, the radio was covered with blood. After all, it came from Uniontown, Pennsylvania. Who knows what goes on out there? Now we're going to fix this crack. We'll fill it with some super glue and clamp it together. Okay, we'll let this sit overnight and then tomorrow we'll reinforce it. I don't trust the super glue by itself to keep that crack together. I should have put the glue on the outside. There's a lesson learned. Wow, this glue is hard. I think it's harder than the plastic. It was actually rather serendipitous. Do you like that word? It was serendipitous that I had to sand this crack because I found another smaller hairline crack right here. Right here somewhere. Here it is. So, when I reinforce the large crack on the inside, I'll also reinforce the smaller crack. And then maybe I'll smoke some crack. A friend of mine made me this. It's a big hunk of styrofoam dissolved in toluene. When it dries, it's very hard, like an epoxy. So we're going to use this concoction to glue the broken plastic piece back to the cabinet. Now I've got a fan on behind me. One thing I don't want to do is breathe any of these toluene fumes. This cabinet's been sanded and polished, and it really brought the color back. When I got the radio, it had sort of a green tint to it, but now the inside and the outside are about the same. That repair turned out very well. And I found the label for the bottom on the floor underneath the workbench. So I made a new one for it. And that label goes down here like this. Now the front is looking good. This repair with the toluene and styrofoam, that is like really strong. It's so strong I'm going to use that to mount the speakers to the front of the panel. Now we were out walking the other night and I like to trash pick. And in the trash I found these party shooters. They're just syringes. You're supposed to suck up alcohol with these at a party. In my case, that much. And then you shoot it into a glass and stir it up and have some kind of mixed drink. So these are probably 25-cent syringes. Somebody packaged them, 6 in a box, and sold them for $10. Somebody bought them and didn't use them, and now I have them. So I'm going to use the syringe to suck up this styrofoam toluene concoction, and then I can mount the speakers to the cabinet without making too big of a mess. Now, The back looks real nice, and the front looks real nice. And when you put them together, they both look real nice, except there's a chunk missing out of here, and it's really bothering me. It's annoying me to no end. So what I'm going to do is fill that in. After I fill it in, I'm going to have to paint it. I'll either paint just the top, or maybe the whole top front. Now, it's unlikely I'll get the color to match, but if I don't like it, I'll just try a different color. I'm going to try to use a color that's as close to this as I can find. Here are the vacuum tubes that came with the radio. We have a 12A V6, a 12BA6, 12BE6, 35W4, and 50C5. Except for the 35W4, they're all labeled Silvertone, so they probably came with the radio when the radio was new. The 35W4 is a General Electric. Well, being as they're all 64 years old, we're going to test them with the tube tester. You know, I got this tube tester from my buddy Joe when I was a teenager. I lent him $35, which was a lot back then. So Joe was the type of guy that had a whole bunch of stuff in his basement, but he never had any money. So he said to me, or asked me, "What do I have that you want?" And I said, "How about that tube tester? You could always borrow it back." And that's how I got the tube tester. We're about to test the 12A V6. There are 3 tests. For the first test, we want to see the meter go above 1250. Now we're using the top scale, 500, 1000, 1500. So it's got to hit about here. And here we go. Okay, now there are 2 diodes. For the diode test, it only has to go past this line where it says diodes OK. First diode, OK. Second diode, OK. This tube is testing as though it's brand new. Now the 12BA6, we're on the center scale that goes from 1000 to 6000. We want to see a reading of 3300, which is a little bit past halfway. And that tube is testing excellent. Now the 12BE6 has 2 tests. For the first test, we want a reading of 1425. Once again, we're on the top scale. 1425 would be about there. Here we go. Okay, the second test, we want to see 1600. Here's the first test of the 35W4 rectifier. This test is a little bit different. We want to see a short. We want to see this light light up in positions 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. This is the rectifier test of the 35W4. In this case, it will read either replace or good. There are no numbers to deal with. And here we go. And it's good. And finally, we'll test the 50C5 audio output tube. So we're on the bottom scale that goes from 0 to 1500. We want to see a reading of 7500, which is right smack in the middle. And it's about halfway there. If we change the scales, I'm on the middle scale, and it's reading about 4500. So it's only reading like halfway. Well, considering all the other tubes are testing like they're brand new, I'll replace that. Okay, we've got another 50C5 in the socket. We're going to give it a test. We're looking for a reading of 7500. And it's just shy, so it's not testing new. It's definitely a used tube, but it's testing very, very good. And that's the one that will go in the radio.
some people know what my sense of humor.
This paint job turned out pretty good. Now the color's not an exact match, but I think once we put the blue back on and we have our gold knobs and the black dial, it won't be very apparent that the color's off. So let's put the dial in. And we're going to glue that in with some of this styrofoam and toluene. Now it's time to put the radio chassis back inside the front panel, and we'll put a new cord on it. I'm not going to use an interlocking plug. I'm going to solder directly to this connector. The original cord came in through the bottom, but I don't like that idea because it has to bend, and it would also, I think, encourage the radio to flip over onto its face if the cord got tugged on. So the replacement cord's going to come in through the back. I'm going to insulate these pins because I'll touch them and shock myself, and then I'll damage the radio when I pull my arm back.
People in that same school don't have those programs in there anymore. Why not? Because somebody said, well, maybe we were pushing kids. That's what they said. Maybe we were pushing kids into trades.
Okay, it's July. It's like July 20th or something. And I'm picking up Christmas music. I'm time traveling. I'm meddling with time.
And he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of the greatness of his government and peace, he will reign on David's throne, establishing and upholding it with and righteousness.
To 1 inch are possible in the warned area. Flash flooding is ongoing or expected to begin shortly. Hazard, flash flooding caused by thunderstorms. Source, radar and automated gauges. Impact, flooding of small creeks and streams, urban areas, highways, streets.
I found the intermittent. It's caused by these speakers moving around, and then the metal housing of the speaker would touch something on the circuit board. I'm not sure what. But when I immobilized the speakers, the problem went away. So I think the next step is to glue the speakers in. These party shooter syringes didn't come with any needles. Are you telling me that drunk people can't have needles, but drug addicts can? I find that very, very offensive. I'm going to sue the people that put these in the trash. It won't suck it up, it's too thick. Well, so much for the loose speaker theory. The actual problem was that this solder connection and this solder connection were both broken. And when I tilted the radio, it would sometimes make and sometimes break the connection. The fact that it didn't happen when I had the speakers taped down was just a coincidence. I used that chassis number to go online and get some information about the radio. I have the same photo fact. Now, that shows the same radio but in a different cabinet. What I was actually interested in is this weird pilot light. According to the schematic, it's a number 12. The only modern application I can find for this pilot light is in Lionel train sets and accessories. So you can go online to a store that sells Lionel train parts and purchase the bulb. They also sell them on Amazon and eBay, but the cost of the postage is outrageous. It's $2 for the bulb and $9.95 to ship it to you. So we'll make our own out of one of these Sylvania 53s. The original pilot light was probably brighter. There was this piece of paper stuck in the top. This prevents the light from leaking out through the seam in the two cabinet halves. Speaking of which, I think it's time to put the two cabinet halves back together. Before we put it back together, I'll try to tweak it up a little bit. Now, I have been working on this for several minutes, and I can't get the radio to play any better than it did before I started. So I don't think it was in need of any sort of alignment. Now you might be saying to yourself, wait, don't put it back together. You didn't replace that filter capacitor. The filter capacitor! You've got to replace that filter capacitor! No, I'm not going to replace the filter capacitor. I think it's amazing that it's still working after 64 years, and I'm going to leave it in the radio. Presenting the 1960 refurbished Sears Silvertone. Well, that turned out pretty nice. Next up are some before and after pictures and some music from 1960.
Hey, screw one shit. Hey, screw one shit.
Lyrics